Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. My name is Vivian Acquah, and welcome to episode number 82. And I have to admit something because it's my 1 year anniversary for Let's Humanize the Workplace. And I keep forgetting because this whole year of 2020, it feels like 10 years. I was just having this conversation with Jennifer, and I will definitely properly introduce her, but I wanted to include her in this conversation as we are starting now. So, 82 episodes in 1 year, Dutch and English, but as from next year, I'll definitely do more in English as well because there's so much work to be done when it comes to DEI, and there's so much work to be done to create environments where people can be themselves. I wanted to share a quote. This is a quote by Minda Harts, the lady who wrote the memo. And she said something, or she shared something recently that speaks to my heart, and I think Jennifer as well, is that the work that I do, and I am also going to speak on behalf for Jennifer, is that we are speaking up because there is so much injustice in the workplace. We are speaking up because there is so much inequality in the workplace. And we are speaking up because we are speaking up for those who can't. We are changing the world for those who can't speak up. So that's why I felt important. I found it very important to also share Minda Hart's quote: somebody's freedom is tied to you activating your voice. And I want all of you to look yourself in the mirror and think about what you can do. You can advocate in so many ways, you can speak up in so many ways. Try to think about what you can do to support somebody who can't speak up. Now I'm going to properly introduce Jennifer Brown. I'm fanning right here, and she knows that. But I'm over. I'm a little bit over my crush. But Jennifer Brown. She is an award-winning entrepreneur, speaker, diversity and inclusion consultant, and also the author. As the CEO of Jennifer Brown Consulting, headquartered in New York City, Jennifer is responsible for designing workplace strategies that have been implemented by some of the biggest companies and nonprofit in the world. And I am a fan of her book, her latest book called How to Be an Inclusive Leader. And we are going to start the conversation now. Jennifer, hi, welcome.
Hi, Vivian. Congratulations on your first year anniversary. What a year. What a year.
Thank you.
Good timing. I don't know if it's good timing or what.
Yes. Oh, my son.
Hey.
Hi. It's bedtime.
Oh, you have a visitor. Hi. Cute. That just sums up the year too.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. The year started in a weird way. It started in a weird way. But I have to ask all my guests these questions. And why do we need to humanize the virtual workplace?
We needed to humanize the workplace before this year, right? Before we all move virtual. I mean, many of us, Vivian, like you and I, we study what's broken in the workplace, and we're constantly, elevating these messages and those voices that aren't feeling seen and heard. That's been many, many years of doing that and feeling that frustration of a lack of, appetite for change and true investment in changing what needs to be changed in order to enable more of us to be seen and heard. And so humanizing the virtual workplace, it continues to be critical, but I think virtual relationships are built differently. We've got to somehow figure out how community and belonging can be created and invested in when all we have is, each other on a screen. We don't have the chance encounters in an office, right? Which I think helped some of us find community, helped some of us find those mentors and sponsors that we need, right? Or have those chance conversations about a job opportunity, or for someone to quote unquote, like literally see us at work doing something amazing and be impressed by us and saying, hey, that person's really talented. I want to make sure I support them. So we need to almost manufacture opportunities for visibility for ourselves and also for others, and lift each other up digitally, which I think is it just looks different. I don't know if it's impossible. I just think it almost feels like learning a new language. And by the way, when we go back to physical or even a hybrid, what's really neat is I feel like we're going to have a broadened language and palette to work with, because we've really grown our competencies in terms of making emotional connections virtually, getting things done, checking in on each other. We've really grown this year, I think, in terms of empathy, I hope. Really
that's what I wanted to say as well, because unfortunately, there are still companies or people or managers who seem to have this tight control of being over controlling and still not being able to trust people while they're working from home.
Crazy. I don't like that at all. I think those managers and those leaders are not learning the right lessons from this year. The right lessons to be learning are empathy, vulnerability, transparency, flexibility. Performance looks different in a pandemic, and it looks different depending on all the intersecting identities that we all have, whether those are visible or invisible. Our lives, are very much should be top of mind for every, not just leader, but every colleague. We can support each other. Like Vivian, I could say to you, you have small children, I don't. So if we were on the same team, the work sharing, right? The way that we might support each other differently, given the constraints that some of us are under, that's what I think really is what we could be discovering this year, instead of kind of applying old performance standards in a very different context. We've got to rewrite some of these rules so that they're not so, frankly, really old school.
True. I'm getting a question also. Many managers are struggling, and I can totally back that. But I do also feel like managers need to find help or need to ask help, and they need to learn how to lead their people instead of controlling their people.
It's a little bit more perhaps less hierarchical, but I appreciate the comment, because unfortunately then managers maybe still are accountable for the same output, and yet we're all, I think, struggling differently and more this year to get things done. And so there's no wiggle room being allowed for that. There's like not a lot of flexibility. And if you're a certain kind of level in a company, you're still getting the same accountability. So really for managers, I think what needs to really change is the folks above you. You need to have that humanity, empathy, revisiting, like, okay, so what really does need to get done? Let's decide this together. Let's think about how, and let's give people as much freedom as we can to get it done in the way and the timing that they can. But it's a struggle. I mean, there's this tension between performance definitions and expectations, and all of our struggles that have been exacerbated, I think, this year. And it feels sometimes like it's at a breaking point to me. I don't know what the answer is, but to me, this has been brewing for a while. I mean, we were just hiding more about our lives before this year. And now I feel like it's very much on display. It's like, if I were closeted, I'm an LGBTQ plus woman, cisgender woman, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. And I have a partner. And if I were closeted, like many of us are, but my same sex partner is walking around behind me, I have to come out, and or everybody knows we're parents. Everyone knows we might be coping with mental health issues that are rising this year. It's hard to control anymore what people know about us. And that's a good thing and a terrifying thing. And in some cases, maybe a dangerous thing, because stigma hasn't gone away. People are still people.
Yeah. I want to bring it back towards the managers, because what I have seen, though, is companies tying in the turnover percentage, connecting it to the management's performance. That's something that you don't see often, especially when it comes to the leakage of diverse talent.
True. So, Vivian, are you saying that they are holding managers accountable for retaining their talent?
No,
Like
they are
that's,
holding managers. Yeah, I think we're saying the same thing.
mhm.
Um, when people leave, right? It's not a common thing that you are being asked to do an exit interview. What if, just an idea, what if companies would do an exit interview where the person who leaves is truly honest and is sharing something? Well, I didn't feel like I belong, or there was a diversity leakage, or there was a diversity problem. And if you see that tied in to a department or to a manager, that's something that you can hold a manager accountable for, because most of the times it is the manager, just like
Yes, it is.
Gardner just expressed in a book or in an audiobook that I was listening. It is the manager most of the time.
Yes, most of the time. How about even a stay interview? You know, if you wait until exit interviews, it's too
Yeah,
late to address it, right?
yeah,
So
true.
I like the idea of stay interviews, but yeah, I mean, the future, ideally, there would be an accountability for engagement
Hmm.
scores seen through the lens of diverse identities, so that we could cut the data and we could see where is the problem in the organization, which
Hmm.
leaders are, you know, does that roll up to? Because you're right,
Hmm.
people leave managers before they leave jobs and companies. It's really that direct manager, right, that has the most impact on our day-to-day experience. And then we could isolate the challenges and address them, like you said. But unfortunately, performance criteria and reviews and compensation is still widely not tied to diversity and inclusion metrics, in my
Not
experience.
yet.
Not yet at all. And so
Not
that's in
yet.
the future.
Yeah,
It
definitely
needs to
not
be,
yet.
though.
But I wanted to do this interview for the longest. So you have been on my guest list to ask, and I'm so happy that we are having this conversation, because 2020, oh, what a year 2020 has been.
Wow.
So let's go back to January. What was the state of DEI in the States? And I will share my version from Europe.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you'd agree over there, but I think we were on a steady climb. I
Hmm.
wouldn't say there was
Yeah,
any sort of crescendo. I
yeah.
wish. But I do think it's been this kind of a steady kind of drumbeat to say this is important, you need this. And so we were entering as a firm fairly strong, fairly
Hmm.
strong. But then, of course, the cliff happened. The first cliff happened in March, and then what was sort of viewed as discretionary, unfortunately, by so many of our would-be clients, viewed as a nice to have, is what I mean by
Hmm.
discretionary. It's always something we've battled. And in down economic times, for example, it is the hardest time to be in
Yeah,
DEI, because it
yeah.
gets cut immediately. It gets devalued. It has, you know, nothing to do with recovery or innovation. Or, I mean, people just seem to kind of forget that this literally powers performance, and performance
It
powers
powers
innovation.
productivity and
Yes,
engagement at its
exactly.
core, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, so I think I was terrified in May, kind of sitting there watching everything get canceled, and we all had, I think, this kind of month and a half of despair about.
Hmm.
And then some of us who own business got applied for something called PPP, which thank goodness the government kind of, you know, was able to provide some of us again to kind of bridge the revenue loss,
Hmm.
because it was wiped out. It was wiped
Yeah.
out for so many of us. So yeah, so Vivian, tell me where you think we were entering 2020 from before March.
In Europe, I mean, I'm from the Netherlands, and you have to know that the conversations in the Netherlands is different. So when I talk to international companies, yes, they follow what they are doing in the States, and they know that we have to invest in DEI. But the Dutch environment, I'm speaking of the majority. We are learning about diversity and why, yeah, that's why I'm continuing this conversation more in English, because we are just learning about the qualities of the benefits of having diverse people, and we are not ready yet to talk about the inclusion part, and let alone the equity part, right? So there's so much work to be done. But realizing what happened in March, that's a different way of showcasing what working parents were going through, what single mothers were going, or single parents were going through, what somebody who was a caregiver was going through, or somebody who was just losing family members or losing friends around them. You had to deal with so many things, and it showcased the companies that were doing the work, as in creating that personal connection, and the companies that weren't doing the work, they were struggling. They are still struggling. So it's similar, but it feels like we are way behind when it comes to the DE&I work.
That would be what I would imagine would be true, Vivian, based on what I know. But on the flip side, we in America, we look at certain, for example, diversity on boards is something like a shining example of something I think we desperately want and need, and aren't.
Where is it?
In America,
no, really.
I mean, in America, like California has like a new law that requires at least one woman on every public board, like just one. And that feels like, oh, big news, Yeah. It's just ridiculous. It's like we are allergic to requirements in this country. And yet I believe, having been in this work for so long, that what gets measured gets done. Unfortunately, the measurements have to be in place in order to get people to, do what the right thing, which is really horrible. I mean, I think it shouldn't be that way. But it's sadly, it's the language that people understand.
And we need to start somewhere, because in the Netherlands last year, I wrote an article about the Netherlands being not forcing, but demanding from companies that are registered on our financial index. I'm forgetting the word. They are demanding that at least some percentages of the women of the board are female.
Yeah.
I do have to say that they had to tie in something else, as in diverse women.
Yeah, I know. So that's the other problem, right? How many of these women are going to end up being white women, straight women, cisgender women, right? That's if there's not full criteria, and that, from the beginning, it is always going to happen that the most, privileged whatever identities are going to get through that net. And so I'm not a fan. I'm a fan of the concept, but I really deeply recommend that whenever you're launching a new strategy, it has to be intersectional. It's got to be, and so, but I think, companies push back on that and sometimes say, we want to here, and then we'll get to that next year. Or we don't want to talk LGBTQ yet.
For the people that don't know what intersectionality is, maybe can you share something? Because I live in a box country where we box people. You're this and you cannot be that. So
oh my gosh, yes. Yes. Okay, so this is a big topic in the US. Intersectionality, it was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw. She's a Black woman professor here in the US, American, and it is defined by her as the impact of multiple overlapping stigmatized identities. So meaning female, Black, LGBTQ, maybe, but she defines it really focusing most of her work on Black women. And so the concept, though, thinking about when you are underrepresented and you have an underrepresented or a marginalized identity, as we refer to it here, there are multiple things about me, or maybe about you, Vivian, both visible and invisible. Because remember, I don't necessarily, somebody may not know I identify as a member of the LGBTQ community, but that qualifies as a underrepresented and historically marginalized community. So for me, the intersectionality, I might define it, take a page from Kimberly Crenshaw because it wasn't her original intent. But I think of my femaleness in a male-dominated world. I think about being LGBTQ in a heteronormative world. And I think I'm aware of those intersections. And so my point about boards and other things is that we need, if we're going to require diversity, we need to define what that is, but then we also need to make sure that we're not just defining it like one way, but that we not just allow for, but that we strongly encourage multiple identities to be represented. So it's not just women. It is not just people of color. It's not just heterosexual people or cisgender people.
It's not just homogeneous.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if we can find candidates that represent more than one marginalized identity, that's powerful. It's a powerful statement. And of course, we want more than 1 out of every 10. I mean, that's kind of the metric of the California requirement, because most board, the working number on a board, maybe say it's 10, and you have 1 woman, and likely it's a white woman.
Yeah.
That's okay, but that's just scratching the surface of what we really need. So I personally, I think we either go big or we don't do it at all. But some people might argue, look, a small step is better than no step.
It's a small step, but you're putting
there's a lot of different opinions about all that. But I don't know. I think intersectionality is critical.
It's a small step, but then again, you're putting the woman in this case in a position where she's being tokenized, or she can be tokenized, right? And that's also something that we want to.
You want 3 out of every 10.
Yeah. So I'm going to take you back, because end of May.
Ideally.
End of May, something impactful happened, which amplified connectiveness, but also amplified injustice, amplified hurt, amplified anger, amplified sadness, amplified, this could also be my son, this could also be my husband, this could also be my partner, this could have also been my uncle, this could have also been somebody who was impactful within my community or within my network. And then a week after, or within a week, so many businesses, so many companies committed online Blackout Tuesday. What happened to you after that, or for you after that?
Vivian, you are glitching out, but can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me?
Yeah, so what happened after May? What happened for you?
Vivian, can you see or hear me?
I can see or hear you. This is the wonders of technology. I will just give me a moment, and I will type.
Live. Oh, hello. Are you back?
What happened after May? What happened after the death of George Floyd? Because a lot of companies were sharing their support on social media. But in the 6 months' time, what have we seen now?
Oh, so much. I mean, wow, it was a crash course since late May. We saw a lot of companies be caught unprepared. Number one, most, I would say, were not prepared for the massive, the energy, the truth that was revealed on the part of Black America, Black employees, consumers, customers, right? So holding accountable some of the places we spend money with and, we patronize. So it just has been a very uncomfortable, in a really good way, really uncomfortable time. And a risky time, I think, for employers who haven't really been doing the work. They just not even have a script. I mean, they hadn't really, given a lot of credence to their own employee demographics and the experience and the culture and the diversity and inclusion or exclusion, belonging. there was just a lot of real soul searching that happened amongst companies, and they made a lot of mistakes, I think, in trying to show solidarity. So what we might call performative allyship, Vivian, meaning, posting the Black Lives Matter square, but literally, like, if you pull
Going
back the
back
curtain
to business
and
as
you look
usual.
at the board or the executive
Yeah.
team
Yeah.
there, for example.
Yeah.
And so, yes. And so for companies that were prepared, they've been doing the work, they like flexed with the moment, right? And they, they had the language and they'd already had a track record. They were walking the talk. So for them, they, I think, rode through the summer more easily, more congruently, more authentically. But the scrutiny of this year has meant that all eyes are on the brokenness of belonging at work, particularly for certain communities, right?
Yeah.
And I just, that's been incredible, because that meant that the platform for action was, the appetite was really strong, and we could do some really good work, which we've done. We've really leveraged this moment to push, with the wind at our back, we've been able to push for a lot more aggressive solutions this year than we've ever been able to do. So it's actually been, it's tragedy. And, but the fuel that became available to us for change has been unprecedented. I've never seen anything like it in 12 years in this business. To make change, to tell the truth, to challenge leaders, to question systems, to apply an equity lens and say, why do we do it this way? Why is this harm still happening? How can we change it? Not just as a Band-Aid, but permanently, going through the conversation about it. And there really wasn't before this summer.
Yeah. But looking, so I'm fast forwarding towards last month. I think, I'm hoping that Jennifer is coming back, but I'm fast forwarding towards last month. Nasdaq shared something about their about demanding or asking the companies that are joining the Nasdaq to showcase diversity, show numbers, show figures, showcase. When you are talking about diversity, you want to show the numbers. And I know that we don't want it to be only a numbers game, but what they are doing is challenging companies to think ahead, think about how you are including people, think about how you are raising the bar when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm hoping that Jennifer is coming back. But in the meantime, if you have anything to share regarding how you saw what kind of impact 2020 has made done for you when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, I would definitely want to showcase you and show whatever it is that you wanted to share. So many questions that I wanted to ask Jennifer, but I will do the next one. When I look at what's happening now, and when I look at the current state when it comes to, yes, she's back.
I'm back. I've never had this happen. I'm so sorry. There must be some
no worries
going on in New York City. It's never a good thing.
It can happen. It can happen. What I wanted to share was, I don't know if you saw it, but I just shared something about Nasdaq asking or demanding from their clients to showcase the numbers when it comes to diversity. Is it so that external stakeholders are now a force to move the needle so much faster?
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about, that, we almost have to mandate this change. And if you're a powerful entity like Nasdaq, you sit at the nexus of this huge ecosystem. And so one decision done by a player like that then literally creates like so much change so quickly, compared to what maybe you and I would be able to do, Vivian, if we were consulting in each one of those, individual organizations. So it's an example to me of, I think of organizations as allies sometimes, like, or accomplices. However that was driven and why, I don't know, right? We're not in Nasdaq, but that one move
I applaud
will
it.
change
I
the face.
applaud that change because it's for them to be one of
Excellent.
the early adopters when it comes to this. It's just, for me, it's creating hope. It's creating hope that this change might happen sooner than later. You saw my son. He is 7, and the reason why I'm doing what I do has to do with him. It's not that for me it's too late, but for me, planting the seeds now, giving it TLC, giving it the sun, giving it, the energy that a plant needs so that it can grow and so that he can be in a place where he can be himself. Whatever, whoever, however he is. I want him to be himself. That's my hope. But I wanted also to ask this question because we are changing, the world is changing, the global population is changing, and there are so many studies, and I mean there's so much research available that's beneficial for different stakeholders doing the right thing now. But when are we going to stop and go beyond the business case? Because there are so many business cases already that I'm just like, you are demanding the business case on top of a business case for the business case just because of you wanted the business case.
Yeah, it's annoying. I just feel like asking over and over again for more data is like a delay tactic.
Yeah.
I honestly, I think that continuing to, when literally you can look it up on Google, like we shouldn't spend any time, at least if I'm in dialogue with an executive team, say, like, go research it yourself. It's documented everywhere.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. So, but you're right that I think it's a way of convincing people who need to be convinced that this is worthwhile. And it's sad that we have to convince people about the power of belonging. Like that just troubles me so much because, you and I know we do better work when we feel a sense of safety, psychological safety, belonging. And then that leads to creativity, which leads to, better business results. Right. And so, but that's where it starts. And we know that. And I wish we could say, the human case versus the business case. Anyway, I work on this a lot, and I think about how can I motivate people to change, because selfishly, maybe they want to be the most effective that they can be. They want to be the most resonant and forward-thinking leader. They want to be somebody who people trust. And so sometimes beyond the business case might be, hey, as a leader, as a manager, do you want to be good at this because the world is changing? And in order to lead in that world or be hired or get promoted, it's a piece we have to be good at because our world, our teams are changing, our customers are changing. And so it's not a moral argument. It's more of I guess it's a selfish argument. But sometimes with leaders that I coach, I like to say, like, how prepared are you for the next generation of talent? And what do you know about them? Do you know that they value a diverse and inclusive workplace highly? Do you know they value purpose? Do you know that they value having an alignment of their values with the values of the place that they work? And then kind of saying to leaders, okay, so given that changing landscape, how do we then need to lead? And that is a different definition, I think, of leadership than a lot of us grew up understanding or seeing. And so anyway, that's another angle that I take when I have the leadership conversation. And it seems to resonate with people, especially those who have kids of a certain age, to say, wow, you're right. Like, this company's not going to succeed and I'm not going to succeed if I don't kind of take this on board and do the learning myself that I need to do, and not wait for you or me to come in and teach it, but literally to read every book you can, to put yourself in those environments where you're challenged and you're uncomfortable and you don't know what to say. And like, that work is the work that every human needs to do, because the world is changing. And if you get left behind, I don't know, most people care about not being left behind.
True. I also wanted to build upon what you just shared, right? Because sometimes people get confused when you say leaders or managers, but I want you to add in the word self. Every time you see somebody talking about leaders, add in the word self leader, because I do believe that you don't always have to wait for certain policies to be in place to just do just one little thing where you can speak up, where you can amplify diversity, where you can amplify inclusion. It has to start from yourself first before you are going to bring it towards somebody else, or before you are going to bring it into your team. So what are you doing now to create that impact, that lasting impact, that authentic impact, that impact that creates more heart? Heart empowers heart. So why don't we lead with our heart?
We should. And it's what's been missing in the
Mm-hmm.
workplace. And this year, I think this year ignited our heart.
Yeah.
You know, it really, first, the pandemic ignited it,
Yeah.
seeing the disparities in terms of inequities
Mm-hmm.
in our society, right? The pandemic really laid that out.
Yeah.
Healthcare, socioeconomic, first responders, how COVID impacts Black and Brown communities, you know, just the list goes on. So, and then to have that open-heartedness and go into late May and see the murder of George Floyd and see so many awakenings in people that didn't think about these things before. I think we've really crossed into new territory in terms of what our hearts see. So that's a gift. That is an enormous, I don't even think we would be even having this conversation if these things hadn't happened in the way that they did and in the order they did this year.
True.
I think it was all, it flowed in the way. Yeah. I hope you can hear me okay, Vivian.
Yes, definitely.
I'm going in and out.
I wanted to talk about your upcoming president and the combination of his vice president. What is your hope? What is your hope? Because I am seeing positive changes already without him being, you know, having his seat or having his place on the table. But what is your hope?
We have so much healing to do. So much faith we need to restore in our country's leadership. But we also have major polarities occurring that are almost getting worse. So, and I think that we're going to have to acknowledge the pulling apart of our country, and the sort of us and them, the way we have been almost engineered to look at each other as enemies.
Yeah.
Along ideological lines. And that's never totally true. And yet to read media, and I'm sure we're being manipulated also. Yeah. Of course, we know we are, right? And so we're being told things about each other that aren't the whole story.
True.
So I think we've got to really be careful about what we digest. And when we think that of othering, we have to really challenge ourselves to come from this place of love and truly seeing and hearing like others. And we have to combat that because everything around us is encouraging us to polarize.
Yeah.
So D&I folks, I think we have to really we've got to hold the middle and make sure that we're continuing not to pull apart, but that we're trying to grow together and learn from each other and be challenged by each other so that we can transform. And that so that we can realize, of course, there's more that unites us. There's more that we share than divides us. And I know it sounds like a cliche, but I think it's more important than ever to focus on what I might say are shared experiences relating to diversity. Could that be mental health? Can that be parenting? Can that be, things that transcend our differences, that are more universal? Those are really wonderful places to start. the conversations, as we learn about each other and learn to trust each other. But much trust has been broken. So I hope the new administration can fight against that polarization.
Thank you, Michael, for sharing that.
Thank you, Michael. We're fighting through. We're going to be
Yes, definitely. When we start having honest conversations, because sometimes when you join in the workplace, you're put in a certain position, in a certain place, and you start to do the work without having these conversations. Are you encouraging that we have more similar, let's humanize the workplace conversations where we learn from each other, where we at least have a conversation, of course, in a safe environment where people feel comfortable enough to share what's on their mind?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, Vivian. Look, there's still a lot of us who aren't comfortable bringing our full selves because of these identities, right? And so there is this, the nuance of the work is that you need to create single identity conversations, if there is such a thing, and support and enable that so that people feel a safe space to just be. And say, as a Black woman, this is what I'm experiencing. As a queer woman, this is what I'm experiencing. As a person with a disability, here's the microaggressions I hear on a day-to-day basis. And to be able to share that with people of like identity or allies in that space is so important for our own self-care. So there's that work and support that is critical, because being underrepresented is no small thing. It's a daily struggle for many of us to feel alone and isolated.
Yeah.
And we're not alone.
Which brings me to a topic that I wanted to bring in, but just briefly touch base on it, because there's something happening in the world, in the United States, at a company. I'm not going to name the company, but a lady was fired, and the lady said that the company is saying that she was let go, or she left, and she is saying that she was fired. In her case, she has, let's say she has a crowd. She has people who believe in what she's doing, and she has backup. 3,000 people are signing a petition to back her story. So company X is saying, well, she left and this is what happening. And the other person is having a voice and using her voice to showcase what is happening. Most of the time when people from a marginalized group are speaking up, they don't have that backup. Most of the time they leave. And the reason why I'm saying that because I am one of them.
Yeah.
I am one of them.
Yeah. So maybe we're making progress, right? This is a sign of the accountability that companies are being held to. Yeah. When something like this happens, it isn't invisible. It's not swept under the rug. Social media can be our friend because it brings transparency to these things, and it becomes, we can debate it in the public square, versus having it be hidden away by the powerful. Yeah. So I think, and I know the story you're talking about, of course, if everybody's listening, you don't kind of, read up on the news. There was a big, a resignation over some ethics issues, and then sort of the acceptance of a resignation, quote unquote. But anyway, I think, I think the companies are I think they should be extremely worried about their actions not matching their stated values and intent. And they should be extremely worried about losing any talented individuals of all identities, but in particular, how hard we should be fighting to diversify our workforce and get the best and brightest and reflect the diversity of the world that we work in, right, and that we serve. And tech companies in particular are so behind on representation. because of years and years and years of unchecked bias in hiring and retention and workplace culture. So yeah, that's a really shocking story, the one that you're talking about. But you're right,
it's still
that we're entering a new
continuing.
age of it's unfolding. It is unfolding.
Yeah.
So again,
Yeah.
like you'll find it in some headlines. If just look at Twitter,
Yeah.
that's all I will say. And you'll see there's a lot of threads going on about the situation that you're talking about. But I think we're making progress. I think the heat is on companies to mean what they say, honor their commitments, and to be held accountable if something doesn't feel right. It's going to be talked about, and it's going to hurt their brand, and it's going to hurt their ability to attract people. Thank you. Right.
Michael.
Said it, not us. Anyway. Yeah. Oh, can I answer that question that we just said? How do we build allyship? Yes. That's one of my favorite topics. Genuine allies, not just paper allies, right? Not just performative ally, right? It's like, oh, I wear the pin, I say you're only an ally if somebody in an affected community calls you an ally. So it is a term we can't give ourselves. It's something we earn. So you need to earn it. We need to earn it every day. It's a journey, not a destination. You've never arrived, I would say. And I love the word accomplice as an alternative to the word ally, or co-conspirator is another word. It's sort of a matter of personal preference. Some people think ally doesn't go far enough. And it's also a bit like, oh, let me bestow my allyship on you versus co-conspirator has an energy of solidarity to it. Like I'm with you, whatever capacity you need me to play, I am here. So how do we build more genuine allyship? I think what I've been teaching is that we all have privileges that we can enact, that we are not enacting. And so even you, Vivian, and me,
I know.
We have various, marginalized identities, but there are also platforms we have, voice that we have, permission that we have, access that we have, socioeconomic comfort that we have that enable us to say something, do something, push, hold accountable, suggest, champion. There's all these things in us that we could be enacting that would put us in this position of being an accomplice to somebody else's success.
Yeah.
And so if we can kind of tap into that, there's so much to be done. I mean, if someone comes to me or I'm somebody's sponsor, and I hear about an opportunity that I think would be great for them, can I bring their name up? Can I make sure they are connected to somebody? Yeah. Can I bring a speaker on to my platform and position them to storytell? There's just, for me, I'm constantly thinking about my own accomplishing behaviors because I want to, whatever power lives in each of us, and there's always a source of power in each of us, that power when it's shared is what changes like the trajectory for others. And so if we saw more of that, and to me, that's not complicated. This is not complicated stuff. It's accessible. I have it in my possession. And what I have to do is just understand, what gap am I trying to help close? And what do I have within my power to shift that gap?
Yeah.
That's
you can start with the allyship with baby steps, right? You don't have to conquer the whole world and let the whole world know that you're an ally. Why don't you start with looking in your network, see how diverse your network is, and reaching out to one person, and then you reach out to the next person, and then you reach out to the next person. So that's what I've been doing. I'm being mindful of the time because I don't want to kidnap you, but I have to say that I so enjoyed this conversation. I'm looking forward to the conversation that we will be having in 2021, maybe somewhere around the summer, to see where we are at, because we need to have this conversation. And like I shared in the beginning, I feel like DEI, the work that we do for DEI, is like the Olympic marathon that we're running, and we are maintaining the flame, keeping the fire alive, and we are passing the torches on to other, experts in this field who are amplifying diversity, equity, and inclusion at the same time. Because the more people who are raising awareness, the more we get talking, the more we implement DEI in the right way, the more organizations can become thriving.
I love that Olympic torch analogy. I'm so going to steal that. I love it. It's beautiful. And I'm passing to you. Here we go.
Yes, thank you.
And may it grow. May it grow.
Thank you for this conversation. Everybody who watched, thank you also for watching this conversation. And until next time.
Thank you, Vivian. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.